A man stabbed a dummy 1,000 times every day just to practice killing. After losing his memory, he had convinced himself that he was a cold-blooded murderer, and this time, he actually had to kill someone. It turned out he received an anonymous package with a note inside that read, "I've got evidence of your serial killings. Pay me $1 billion in hush money if you don't want to go to jail." He stared at the note, deep in thought. How could he ever come up with $1 billion, even if he sold himself off piece by piece? Then, he slapped his forehead and made a shocking move.
뭐야? 강장은 이게 구할 수 있는 정도라서 어떻게 할부로는 안 될까요? 딱 20개월만 주시면. 뭐?
His antics left the political circle completely baffled. Little did he know, it was all a trap set by the real murderer. It turned out his boss was the real killer, and the man had mistaken himself for the boss. So, the boss planned to make the man his scapegoat. When a detective threatened the boss with the same $1 billion hush money demand, the boss turned around and threatened the man. This made the man think his identity had been exposed. When the man went to his boss to borrow money, the boss almost burst out laughing. First, the boss knocked the detective unconscious and locked him in an abandoned warehouse. Then, he impersonated someone from the political circle and lured the man to the scene. If the man killed the detective, he would surely be the one blamed for the murder. But the boss overestimated the man's intelligence. Instead of using the door, the man insisted on crawling through the ventilation duct like in the movies, leaving the boss speechless in front of the surveillance cameras.
그냥 문을 열고 들어가.
Using his strange maneuvers, the man reached the inner part of the warehouse without a single stumble. The detective was still unconscious, his back turned to the man, clearly defenseless, but the man didn't see it that way. He imagined the detective had set up countless traps, so he performed a set of air assassination moves, like he was auditioning for a martial arts film. When he realized the detective hadn't noticed, the man praised himself as a genius. He decided to imitate the killing method from the movie The Godfather. He put on gloves and pulled out a wire. Just then, the detective stirred slightly, and the next second, this left the boss speechless again. Seeing the detective was no longer moving, the man finally calmed down. But this time, the detective really woke up. When the man mustered up the courage to attack, the detective suddenly threw him over his shoulder, knocking him down. The boss couldn't stand it anymore and had to intervene. He knocked the detective unconscious again and made it look like the detective had hit a tree while trying to escape. Seeing this, the man quickly dragged the detective back. When the detective woke up again, he found himself tied up and was completely confused. What was the man up to? Unfortunately, the man didn't understand a word and remained immersed in his own murderer fantasy. He yelled at the detective, "Why did you force me? I was going to stop killing. Why did you have to awaken the demon inside me?" The detective was left speechless.
제가 무섭겠죠. 후회가 되시겠죠. 할 수 없습니다.
After saying that, the man was about to attack. The frustrated detective jumped around, wondering how someone could be so stupid. But even a tiny sound scared the man. The boss couldn't sit still in front of the surveillance cameras. He called the man and said he had raised the $1 billion, asking if the man wanted to borrow it. Then, he took the opportunity to remind him that if he was being threatened, there would be a second time. To get rid of the threat once and for all, he had to be ruthless. After hearing this, the man rushed back to the warehouse. He threw the $1 billion in front of the detective and said, "Even though I got the money, you still have to die." Then, he raised the knife toward the detective, but his hand trembled uncontrollably. The detective seized the chance to fight back and used a small knife to cut the ropes. The man immediately chased after him, but during the struggle, he tripped and they both rolled down the stairs. When the man woke up, he found himself covered in blood, and the detective beside him was dead. He stared at his hands and burst into tears. Now, he had really become a murderer.